Let's begin our presentation. The goals of today's webinar are to understand the importance of submitting final report data promptly, review the utilization of the program requirements document, recognize the difference between competence, performance, and patient outcomes when it comes to the CME application, develop CME activities and application responses that effectively describe the desired improvement in learner competence, performance, and/or patient outcomes, to understand when your CME application is fully approved, to learn how to navigate the CME platform to access our new updated disclosure summary, to share some best practices for the CME portal for members and non-members, and a brief reminder on state regulatory mandates. I'm going to cover the refresh section and revisit some of the key takeaways that we covered in our last webinar back in January. If you can recall, back in our last webinar, we did request final reporting from you. Thank you very much for submitting it. Last year, from our internal and external activities, ACS accredited 4,236 educational activities with 52,522 CME credits awarded. We had over 110,000 physicians who participated and 15,000 other learners. So that is commendable, and a lot of work does go into making these activities successful. We continue to ask that you submit all requested information to CPDA as soon as possible so that we can help get you accredited. There is PARS data that we ask that you input in your application once you have received it. PARS is the ACCME's activity reporting system. There are two components that we do ask that you submit as soon as possible, and that is the financial summary. It includes the grants, exhibit fees, evaluation, just the grants and exhibit and registration fees. We also ask that you input as soon as possible the number of MDs that participated and also the number of non-MDs that participated. The next slide is just a screenshot of the application portal. And as you can see, each line item has a specific space for you to enter the data. And on the next slide, it's the same scenario with the financial data. We would just ask that you enter the registration fees in the line item. If it's zero, you can just fill it in, populate it with a zero, please. But all of this financial data on our portal, we do request that as soon as you have it figured out, you input it there for us. And we are available for questions. Should you have any questions on that, you can email or reach out to any member of the CPDA staff. So I'm going to move on to the program requirements document. That document is something we discussed also in our last webinar. And I just want to reiterate the importance of the document. It serves as a guide to what's required to be displayed in your program. There are 6 steps in the program, 6 numbers, and we ask that each one that's applicable is applied to your program for your learners to see. When we follow all of the steps in the program guide, it helps to ensure ACCME compliance. And CPDA, we do provide you with this document when your application is pending approval. So I will go ahead and pass along to Ryan, and he will take us through the latest and greatest information from the ACCME.
Okay, excuse me. Thank you very much, Jada. And thank you all for joining us this morning, and thank you all for your continued partnership. We appreciate it. We appreciate your help with churning out some quality CME activities. So what I'm going to talk to you guys about in this section is we are in constant communication with the ACCME. As you know, they are our governing body, so they send us newsletters and other information, and we're asking them questions. So we often get information from them that we want to share with you, because you guys are on sort of the cutting edge and know what the ACCME is focusing on, what they like to see in the applications. So, for instance, in this session here, what we're going to talk about is the application that you all fill out and the responses in some of the sections where we ask the questions. So, as you know, we are all in the business of continuing medical education. And what is CME exactly? Well, it is when physicians finish residency, they have to keep taking courses in order to stay current and to keep learning and to make sure that they stay certified. So, and also on top of all that, it also helps them drive improvements in practice and optimize the care of their patients, which is, as we know, the overall goal of what physicians do. And that's why CME is such an important part of it, is because it's a way for them to keep learning after they complete school. So that's why the ACCME does ask questions, and they want to know things about your CME activity. So they know that it's meeting and reaching some of the goals that they set forth in these activities. So they ask for you to establish sort of a roadmap for what you seek to achieve through your CME program. And you do this through the application with all the questions that are asked and the check boxes and things like that that you go through. This is your roadmap. But the part of the roadmap that we're going to focus on today are the expected learner changes in terms of competence, performance, and/or patient outcomes. Those of you that have done the applications before are very familiar with these terms. So I'm just going to go through those briefly just to tell you exactly what they are, so you can write better descriptors of what you're looking for. Not to say that everyone does a great job, but this is just a little additional information going forward. So let's travel to the CME platform, and you can see in this screenshot here, this is actually the part that we will be talking about specifically today in this section. As you can see, it asks the question, how will this activity improve the learner's competence, performance, and/or patient outcomes? And as you can see, they have definitions for competence. Here it says knowledge and action, performance, skill set, and patient outcomes, impact of care. And we'll get into those definitions a little bit more too, because there are several definitions out there. And another important thing to note that I'll get into as well in a second is how it says and/or here. And I'll discuss that in a second, because that basically means that you do not have to fill out all three of these for each activity that you have, because you may not touch upon all of these areas. And also, there's a link here on our site, ACCME Designed to Change. You can always click on that link and it'll take you to all sorts of resources. A lot of the same things I'm going to tell you today, you'll see on there, but there's a lot of information if you follow that link on how to make a good responses and things you can measure in your activity. So, like I said, this is where you're going to this is your roadmap. This is part of where you're going to do it. So what you're being asked for in this part of the application is basically the goals of your educational activity. Is the goal to improve your learner's strategies or skills? They consider that competence. Is the goal to improve what the learners will do in their practice? That would be considered performance. Or is the goal to improve the impact on the patient or on the care delivered, and that would be called patient outcomes. So you might be thinking, well, you know, there's like an annual meeting or a big with multiple sessions, it's obvious that it's going to touch upon all three of these types of things. They teach skills, they teach how to apply these skills in practice. So oftentimes you will be using populating all three of these sections. But if, say, your course is just teaching a skill, then you would just be filling out the competence section and then putting non-available in the other ones. And that's why it says at the top, and I wanted to mention again, it says and/or. So please don't feel compelled to write answers for all three of these if your activity is not going to be focusing on them. And also you may be thinking, well, how, some of you might not have direct access to some of this content. So you ask, how would you know the answers to these questions? Well, the planning committee is a good resource. They should be have planning documents there that you can reference. They're writing learning objectives too. And a lot of times you can take these learning objectives and extract the information out of the learning objectives and apply it into one of these 3 sections. That's another good resource if you're having trouble writing these. Also, you can ask the faculty. Anybody involved in the session is a good resource to zero in and really make these answers solid. And then you might also be asking now, well, how is this measured? Well, this is done, at least from our side of things, through the evaluation and the post-survey that we ask that you give the learners. So if you're familiar with the evaluation that goes out, the learners get it right when they finish the session, right? They have to fill it out to claim their CME. There's 15 questions on it. And if you can recall, these questions ask like, has this activity improved your competence? Has this activity improved your performance? Has this activity improved your patient outcome or patient outcomes? And the learner will mark an answer accordingly. That's where we get a lot of that data for this. And then to even zero in on, say, patient outcomes and to measure some of the growth that goes on through this meeting, we do ask that you send out that optional post survey, and that goes out 60 days after the event. So they claim their credit right after the event takes place. They fill out the evaluation, and then in 60 days, we ask that this optional post survey gets sent out. And that asks the learners to reflect upon what they learned 60 days ago and how that has been applied to, say, their practice or, say, patient outcomes. And that's where they could write that information down. We would be able to collect that data and then send it to the ACC. I mean, this is the stuff that they like to see. This is the stuff that they ask when we get audited. So that's why those surveys are so important and things like that. And also, you can develop your own ways to measure. If there's other things that you want to measure, you can do that too using the evaluation or the post survey. We have those 15 questions minimum on the evaluation. You can add any you like to the evaluation. As long as our 15 are on there, you can add more if there's other things that you want to touch upon or ask your learners or measure. So what I'm going to do now is I will go through competence, performance, and patient outcomes and let you know exactly what those mean. I'll give you some examples and some definitions. Okay, so competence. Now there are various translations that you will find if you go on the ACCME website. And I think they do this because it's a little tricky. So I've included several of them, and usually one or another will click and make sense what competence is in terms of educational measurement. So for instance, competence is knowledge put into action by the learner. Ability equals competence. Knowledge in the presence, experience, and judgment is translated into competence. And what you would do if you could do it. Okay? That's sort of the simplest one that they had on the website that I thought I'd share. But a good way to really grasp it is examples. Say you have a 1-hour CME course, you're teaching an operative skill. They're improving their competence because they're learning this skill. Okay, when they were done, they would fill out the evaluation and ask if their competence has improved from doing this. They would rate it. There's your measurement. Okay, so competence is just an operative skill. But then, say, between when they learned the skill and they got the post-activity survey 60 days later, they actually used the skill. So then they could comment on their performance and patient outcomes being improved as well. So that's competence. So you have to ask yourself, and your planning committee should ask themselves as well, will your activity be improving this? How so? And if you are, that would be the spot on the application where you would fill this in. The next component is performance. And this is the skill, ability, and strategy one implements in practice. This is basically putting that competence into action. Okay, and some examples of this would be the better surgical results, higher patient communication ratings, more appropriate prescribing, things like that. And again, this would be measured first when they're walking out. Will your performance, they get asked, will your performance improve because of this activity? They would say yes or no. And then if they got the post-survey, they could give further data about how it actually did perform specifically and the patient outcomes that came about. So ask yourself, will your activity aim to improve performance? How so? And then lastly is patient outcomes. And this, as we know, are the health characteristics or outcomes related to individuals or groups of individuals within a geographic location. So this could be if your CME event was focusing on a group of people, say in prevalence of disease, mortality rates, or something like that, you would be able to measure this with the evaluation again and the post-survey giving data about how it actually did improve what you were targeting to do in those areas. So that's why the evaluation and the post-activity survey are so important, because they give us the data we need to measure the improvement, okay, in the practice gaps. So as with the other two components, ask yourself, how will your activity improve patient outcomes? And if it will, how so? And remember, it does not have to touch on, when you're filling out your application, it does not have to touch upon all these. You could put non or not applicable if you're not planning on having it, if it's just a skill or something like that, like I said. But a lot of these are intertwined, so you might get data on those surveys that you weren't intending to initially. So in conclusion, obviously, the goal of all of this is the delivery of safe and effective care. And that's why the ACS CME requests that you decide what you want to measure as a result of your educational activity beforehand. And that's why I mentioned the planning committee, your learning objectives. Make sure you talk to them. I mean, people who fill out the applications might even be part of the planning committee. So these questions you might know the answers to them. So ask for help if you need some help building the answers to those questions. And obviously the goal is for better activities and better education in the end. So in conclusion, ask yourself, do you want to measure their strategy or what they would do if they could? Your learners, that would be competence. Do you want to measure them in practice? That would be performance. Or do you want to measure the consequences of their actual performance in practice? And that would be patient outcomes. Okay, so that is the end of my section. I'm going to turn it over to Olivia now. Thank you for paying attention, and pass it over to Olivia.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to go over some important reminders and an update. We can go to the next slide. Thank you. All right, so as a friendly reminder, we would really like to reiterate and request that you please do not rely on your personal stash of documents as you complete an application. And this includes old accreditation boxes as the language changes and our logo has also been updated. So to ensure that you're using the correct information, please always refer to the provided program requirements document and be sure to download the templates in the application each time you apply for CME, as this will guarantee that you're using the most recent up-to-date files. We're continuously refining and editing our documents. And we also wanted to highlight that upon receiving your CME and completion certificates through the CME application pending approval email, your activity is not yet fully approved, and full approval is pending upon completion and approval of the pre-activity steps on the CME platform. So keep in mind that your pending approval email will contain instructions and next steps for obtaining full approval, with guidance as to what is required for the pre-activity step and how to upload those required documents. Okay, so can we go to the next slide? Thank you. So we also want to inform you that there's a revised disclosure summary, which is part of the previously mentioned pre-activity step. And I've included a screenshot of where you can access the document as you work through your application. And as a reminder, you have access to the pre-activity step after you receive your pending approval email. And the disclosure summary is used to compile your disclosure information for speakers, faculty, moderator, discussants, authors, and presenters in lieu of submitting individual disclosure forms. So we've updated the summary to align with our individual disclosure forms, and I'm going to share my screen to walk you through the revised file. Give me 1 second. So there's now 2 separate columns for mitigation options as opposed to 1. So there's one for non-ownership mitigation and another for mitigation that's applicable to individuals who are owners, employees, or stockholders of privately held and eligible companies. So if you receive a disclosure form indicating that an individual is an owner, employee, or stockholder of a privately held and eligible company, the chair or designated official will review the mitigation section of the form to assess whether the individual qualifies for an APCME exception. And you'll take that information and add it to the disclosure summary under column K. And for example, in this disclosure summary, John Smith is listed as an employee of Hearing Contrast LLC. And because he's an employee of an ineligible company, the chair would have to assess whether he meets an ACCME exception and use column K to mark that information. It's right here. Okay. And now I'm going to pass it over to Marilyn.
Thank you, everyone. Today I'm going to go over the MyCME, just some of the best practices and just a brief overview of the state regulatory mandate. Next, please. For the MyCME, some of the best practices and resources are certainly available on our website, but we wanted to keep you in mind that MyCME meets licensing and certification requirements. And what you have to understand is we do have members and non-members that have the ability to manage their CME credits that are earned by the ACS and send those credits over to from the ACS to the ABS. Members are able to manage, view, upload, and track all of their CME activities with, right at a one-stop shop. And they are able to electronically share that information with the ABS. Now, for the non-members use the same system. However, they are able to also send their credits that are earned by the ACS to the ABS. They can also, any activities that are earned by non-members, as with members, they can see that in the ACS portal. It is important to note that we are finding out that when you have members and non-members, they must have an ACS number upon registration. A lot of times your attendees may forget their ACS number. In the long run, that may pose a problem when they're trying to obtain their CME credits or get information into the portal. So it's important to note that ACS members must have an ID as well as non-members. If you have a person that forgets their ID, just kind of encourage them to either give us a call or send us an email, and we would be happy to get their ACS number to them. But it's important to make sure that they don't create another file so there's not a duplicate record in our system. In addition, we encourage you to remind your attendees, please check their email to ensure that their communications are received. We find that a lot of the members may be using the work ID for one thing, but the preferred ID in our system may be their personal one. So please make sure when you're marketing your meeting to encourage them to check their email and contact information thoroughly. And again, as I stressed previously, both members and non-members can use the MyCME to electronically share their CME credits with the ABS. Next, please. We also have to remind you of the attendance reporting and CME data transfer. There is a template that is available on the site, on the ACS website. And basically it confirms, you must confirm the first, last name, the ACS number, and the date of birth. very important. What we want to emphasize here is following the attendance upload, learners can transmit their CME credits to the American Board of Surgery. Please note that this is not an automatic process. It just takes a few minutes for the surgeon or the attendee to go into their portal, select the information, agree to the terms, and send it right over. They have to allow 24 hours, and then they can check with the ABS to make sure those credits went through thoroughly. On the side of the ACS side, members are able to see when the information is accepted on our end. Again, this is a free service for both members and non-members for all ACS educational activities. Next, please. Another reminder here is for the state regulatory mandate. The majority of the state licensing boards have established specific content requirements. So we encourage you that when you're planning your activity, to please review those regulatory mandate descriptions and determine if your course will address any of the content-specific requirements. And if it does, please make sure that your state meets those requirements. So we have provided you, and we'll be showing that shortly, that it is important to just familiarize yourself with your state medical board's approval process. If there's a policy in place, this is applicable to your state. Determine, does your CME activity address the content specified by the licensing board? And then do you need to include specific language in the title, because that's important as well for your CME activity to meet those state licensing board requirements. On this slide, we have given you a screenshot of the state regulatory mandate descriptions. It is available on the ACS website. Please be sure to refer to that when you are trying to determine all of the regulatory mandate information, requirements by state, by boards, anything or any additional questions, you can please feel free to reach out to the NICE CME department, and we will be happy to assist you. So thank you, and now I'll turn this back over to Jada.
Okay, thank you, Marilyn and Ryan and Olivia. Now, this is our Q&A portion of the webinar. Don't see anything much in the chat as far as questions, so would like to open up the floor to our wonderful JPP partners. And if there's any topic or any question that you may have, we would love to hear it.
Any subject at all, any question that you might have about something random, doesn't even have to be related to the content here. Please let us know. And if you don't want to ask it, please send us an email. I hope you all know that you can always email us at any time, either the CPDA inbox or one of whoever's handling your application, or any of us you can email at any time for any help.
This is Lorene. I just wanted to say that I really like the new disclosure form, your new form with the mitigation on it. It makes it, really, it ties it all together, and it's in one document, and it makes it more convenient for all of us. So thank you.
Great, thank you. We're so happy that it helps, and thank you for that positive feedback. We appreciate it. And yeah, any other documents that you guys are struggling with, or something that you see just doesn't fit, let us know, and we want this to be as simple and as streamlined for all of you as possible. So please let us know if there's anything you notice that we could do a little bit better. But thank you, Lorraine. Anyone else? Okay. Well, what we'll do is we're going to, as always, here's our contact information. please, if you have a question, like I said, either email us directly, either me, Olivia, Jada, or Marilyn directly, or you can email the CPDA inbox. Same with my CME if you have questions. Also, we thank you very much for joining us, and we thank you very much for your continued partnership. And if you wouldn't mind, I'm going to send out a little bit later this afternoon, I will send out the recording of this session, the slides, and also a link to our evaluation. It's only about 4 questions. If you wouldn't mind, if you could click on that link, and please give us some feedback, how we did in this meeting, how we're doing in general. If there's things you want us to talk about next time, hot topics, questions, anything at all, please fill out the evaluation. And again, we really appreciate your time and we really appreciate your partnership. So if there's not any more questions, we'll give you guys back a little bit of your time. And yeah, so thank you again. And everybody have a great day. And please reach out if you need anything at all.